Good morning, everybody. Welcome to my office and welcome to day one of our Spiritual Emphasis Week. This week, I would just really love to talk with you guys about building a solid foundation on our Lord and why it's important to build a relationship with God and have that in your lives. We're going to be talking a lot about that throughout this week and just how to handle those things when life changes. Because, I mean, look at what we're going through right now. I mean, everybody has been affected by this, right? I mean, life kind of threw us a curveball and we just have to kind of go with it whether we want to or not. But there's things that we can learn from these changes in life. We can learn from those experiences in our lives. You know, you all have different technology and more advanced things than I did when I was your age. You have so many different things right at your fingertips that I didn't have when I was your age. For example, what we're doing right now, this whole virtual Zoom sessions that you guys are doing, that was non-existent, right? We didn't have those things. So life changes. There's going to be a time as you get older that you're going to look back on things and say, man, I wish I would have had that when I was that age. That would have just made things so much easier, because that's what happens, right? People go through experiences and they said, man, I don't know what I need to do to make this easier. Maybe if I took this and I put it together, it would make it easier. And then they do those things and they implement those things into their lives and they realize, wow, this helps out. And then they pass that on. They teach the things that they've learned and they've experienced on to the next generation, and so on and so on and so on. And then that next generation may come around and say, well, I think there would be a better way of doing this, so let's invent this. This doesn't exist, so let's invent it, and then we can use that to make things better. So things change all the time. Technology changes all the time. I mean, you look at your smartphone. I mean, to think that Apple started all that in 2008, that wasn't that long ago. That's in your lifetime, right? That the advancements in just that, you guys are holding a tiny computer in your hand. It's amazing, and things change. You know, again, experience, knowledge, wisdom, those things that you gain in life will help you get through. And it's kind of like when it comes to building a home, right? There's so many things that have changed throughout the course of the years when it comes to building homes. And those things have to do from anything from materials, like the different types of nails and screws and brackets and braces and the different types of wood to use. And a big example of that is just the state that we live in, right? There are so many different codes and regulations and building instructions that people need to follow because we live in a hurricane-prone state. So there's codes and regulations that we have in the state of Florida, like that Montana doesn't have to follow, right? But you know what's the same across the board? It doesn't matter what state you live in, and really what part of the world you live in. The one thing that every contractor has to make sure before they build is if that place where they're going to build up has a solid foundation. You see, they will go to a place, they will check the soil, they will check the ground, and they will do everything from doing tests in the soil to make sure that it is a good place to build the foundation upon. So they'll come and then they'll clear that land, and then they'll pour that concrete, level it out to give it a sure foundation before they even start to build up. I want you guys to do me a favor. I want you to take a look at this picture. Now, this is a home that is on the beach that survived Hurricane Michael when it slammed into the coast of Florida's Panhandle. Now, I want you to take a look to the left. You can see those foundations that are in the ground, but there's no homes. After the storm came through, they interviewed the people who lived in this home, and they asked them, how was their house built? And they said that they followed every code, every regulation, everything was up to par in what was required to build a home on the beach in the state of Florida where a hurricane can hit. But they said
The one thing they did different was they put extra detail into making sure that the home was fully secure to the foundation. You see, they went on to say that they weren't going to make the same mistake that they've made in the past. So you start to realize, okay, so they've gone through this before. And they probably went through something dramatic before when a hurricane came through. So when it came time to building their new home, they said, okay, this, and this worked. But you know what? It didn't mean anything when the house wasn't secured to the foundation. So they took a little extra time. They put in more detail and more money into making sure that that home was secure to that foundation. So it really doesn't matter how many nails or how many straps or how many brackets you make to build a house. If it's not secured to a solid foundation, it's just going to blow down the road. It may stay together, it may stay whole together, but it's not going to mean anything if it's blown off of its foundation.
Now, the Bible teaches us something similar in Matthew chapter 7. Now, chapter 7 is the conclusion of what we call the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is probably the most famous sermon that Jesus ever gave, if not the most famous sermon ever given by anyone. I mean, it takes place in chapters 5, 6, and 7. And it's kind of the how-to of life. And Jesus is just preaching his heart out. He's giving us all the information that we need. I mean, everything from prayer to the Beatitudes to how to deal with relationships and how to store your treasures in heaven. And then, of course, the story, which we're going to get to in a minute, about the wise builder. And he's telling us all these things so that we will listen and we'll take it. And he tells us, hey, you can either receive it, you can listen to my teachings and take it, or you can just put them aside. But let me tell you about it. And then, you know what? Let's just go. It's Matthew chapter 7. We're going to be reading verses 24, 25, 26, and 27. Whoever hears these teachings of mine and obeys them is like a wise man who built his house on rock. It rained hard, the floods came, and the winds blew, and it beat against that house, but it did not fall, because it was built on rock. Now, whoever hears these teachings of mine and does not obey them is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. It rained hard, the floods came, and the winds blew, and it beat against that house, and it fell with a loud crash. You see, Jesus is giving us instructions here. He's just got done giving us everything we needed. Remember, we just talked about the Sermon on the Mount, right? He just got done preaching about the things that we can implement in our lives, the things that we can learn from in our lives and add them to our lives and build our lives upon that. And he's telling us that we need to start with our foundation, right? We need to build it upon the rock. We need to build it upon something solid. And that's what God is in our life. That's what these things are in our lives. That's what Jesus is in our lives. He is that sure foundation. So we start there. We start with our foundation. And he tells you basically there's two types of people, right? There's those that will listen to these directions, that will follow these directions. And they're basically smart. And then there's those that are going to choose not to, and then they're foolish. So let me just
ask you guys this, and I want you to be honest. If I told you I have a surefire way of you making $10 million, and all you have to do is take this owner's manual, all you have to do is take these directions and follow them. And I take you into a room, and on that table is everything you need to build this, every tool, every piece of equipment that you need to build this project and build it the right way from the ground up. And I told you, just follow the directions. Just follow the different points, and I guarantee you will accomplish this and you will get that $10 million. Now, how many of you would say, forget that, push that owner manual to the side, throw those instructions away, not listen to any of the advice that I'm giving you, even though I've built 10 of these already? How many of you would just be willing to make that choice and say, I'm just going to do it on my own? Are you willing to risk not making that $10 million? Well, that's
basically what Jesus is telling us here. Are you willing to take that chance in your life? He's giving us everything that we need to build upon a solid foundation. Jesus knows why it's so important to build our lives upon a solid foundation, because he knows we're going to go through storms in life, right? I mean, look at our lives right now. We are in a storm. I mean, this is a hurricane of epic proportions, right? I mean, a lot of you out there had plans and expectations, and this whirlwind just came through and it messed it all up. We're being told we can't go out. We're being told we stay in our home. We're being told this, and this, and all these things are just coming at us. This is a storm, right? And the Bible never tells us that we're not going to go through storms in life. But it says when we build our lives upon a sure foundation, we can weather that storm easier because we have God in our lives. It's important. And we're going to go over that this week. We're going to go over 3 steps this week in order to make sure that our foundations are secure with God. We're going to share with you experiences that we've gone through, myself, Mr. and Mrs. Fridge. We're going to be here for you to help you along that way to make sure that you build a strong foundation upon God. We're going to get to know who Jesus is. We're going to learn to do as Jesus did. We're going to learn to follow his example. And hopefully by the end of the week, we're going to have this hunger, this desire to want to serve him and to be more like him. Let's get started.